My beloved children, a warm welcome to all of you. Today, shall we begin the class with a new topic of this chapter, forms of power sharing. Are you ready? Let us start. There are 4 forms of power sharing in modern democracies. They are power sharing among different organs of the government. Second one, power sharing among different levels of the government. Third one, power sharing among different social groups. Fourth one is power sharing among different political parties, pressure groups and movements. We can discuss these different forms of power sharing in detail. First method of power sharing is among different organs of the government. Do you know which are the 3 organs of the government? Yes, it is correct. Legislature, executive and judiciary. There are 3 organs, legislature, executive and judiciary. Here you can see that these 3 organs are placed at the same level to exercise different powers. Because they are placed at the same level, this type of power sharing is also called horizontal distribution of power sharing. In this form of power sharing, each organ can check the work of others. So there is balance in power sharing. Here we can see that the judges are appointed by the executive. But these judges have the right to check the functioning of the executive and the laws made by the legislature. So this system is also called system of check and balance. This power sharing among different organs of the government is also called horizontal distribution of power sharing and the system of check and balance. Now we can go to the second form of power sharing. Power sharing among different levels of the government. First we can take the example of our country, India. In India, we have a general government for the entire country. And there are governments at the state level. In India, we call it as the central government or union government. The provincial governments or regional governments or state governments, they are known by different names in different countries. In this chapter, we already discussed Belgium. There are 2 regions, regional governments. In our country, there are state governments. The constitution clearly lays down the powers of each level of government. Other than the central government and state government, we have a third level of government. Do you know that? Which is the third level of government in our country? Yes, it is the local government. That means panchayats and municipalities. Here you can see that the power is divided from higher level to lower level. From the central government to the state government to the local government. This type of power sharing is called vertical division of power sharing. So, power sharing among different levels of the government is also called what name? Vertical division of power sharing. Third method is the power sharing among different social groups. In this chapter, we discussed about the social groups in 2 countries. Our third point is related with that social groups. Power sharing among different social groups such as religious or linguistic groups. Example for the power sharing among religious groups is, in our country there are minority representation. Example of the power sharing among linguistic group is, we already know that. Which is that? It is the community government in Belgium. That is based on the language or linguistic groups. Legal and constitutional arrangements were made in many countries to give representation to minority sections, weaker sections, women, etc. in the legislature and administration. This was done to give a space in the administration and government to diverse social groups, to give a position or power to the minority, weaker section, women, etc., or different social groups in the legislature and administration. That is the aim of this form of power sharing. In our country, there are reserved constituencies for SC, ST, etc. For what purpose this was done by the governments of different countries? This was done to give a fair share in power to the minority sections. In many places, minority sections were discriminated by the majorities. To avoid that and to give power to the minority sections, these arrangements were made. Fourth form of power sharing is power sharing among different political parties, pressure groups and movements. We all know that political parties are very important in a democracy. At the time of election, it is very clear. In a democracy, citizens have the right to choose our rulers. Through which process it is possible? It is through the election. In election, who are competing? Mainly the political parties are competing. The different political parties are coming with different ideologies and they are from different social groups. Sometimes two or more political parties form an alliance and they make a coalition government in the center. Actual power sharing takes place in a coalition government. The pressure groups and movements also participating in the power sharing. The pressure groups of traders, farmers, industrial workers, etc. They try to participate in the government committees and they also try to influence the government in decision making process. This is the fourth form of power sharing. These four are the different forms of power sharing in modern democracies. Our first chapter, power sharing, is over. Let me sum up the main points of this chapter. First, we started with the country Belgium. In Belgium, the different social groups are Dutch speakers, French speakers and German speakers. The Belgian leaders successfully solved the problem between Dutch speaking community and French speaking community. We already discussed the elements of the Belgian model. When Belgian leaders successfully solved their problems, the capital of Belgium, Brussels, was selected as the headquarters of the European Union. Next, we studied about the country Sri Lanka. The diverse population in Sri Lanka are Sinhala speakers and Tamil speakers. The majority Sinhala speaking community made their dominance over the minority Tamil speaking community. The Sinhala government, they adopted majoritarian measures in Sri Lanka. That created a feeling of alienation among the Sri Lankan Tamils. That led to a civil war in Sri Lanka. In Belgium, the leaders successfully solved the problem that led to the unity of the country. In Sri Lanka, the majority were not ready to accept the minority that led to a civil war or undermined the unity of the country. From the two stories of Belgium and Sri Lanka, then we came to a conclusion that power sharing is necessary in a democracy. We also discussed why power sharing is necessary in a democracy. Today, we discussed the different forms of power sharing. Power sharing among different organs of the government, among different levels of the government, among different social groups such as religious or linguistic groups, among different political parties, pressure groups and movements. This chapter is finished. My dear students, you read the textbook and study well. I hope all of you could follow the class. We can meet in the next class with a new chapter. Thank you.